Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 182 of the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, what is going on with you, brother?
Hey, man, I'm doing all right. How about you?
I'm doing great.
Yeah?
You and I are just tearing it up.
We are.
We've recorded so many episodes in a row, it's scaring me.
It's, my voice is getting a little, because I speak so much.
You do.
You know?
I don't know how you do it. I don't know
either.
Do you have a professional voice coach?
I do, actually.
I know there's somebody that comes in between sessions
just
and
rubs
your throat, sprays it.
Yeah, it's weird that I don't even know who that person is.
Yeah, I don't know either.
But it's kind of cool, I think.
You're a trooper. You're a trooper.
Yeah.
But no, seriously, we have an episode out right now on True Crime All the Time. We're talking about Marjorie Orban. Gibbs, what can I say? I mean, this was a woman that people called a gold digger and was ultimately convicted of murdering her husband for money. So I guess it turned out to be true, but it's a good episode. There's a lot of twists and turns in that one. Make sure you check that out. We also recorded and we have out right now a brand new Patreon only episode,
which is awesome.
It's a good one too. That one is on Richard Ortega. Now, he had an accomplice, but he was the main kind of killer, so I named the episode that. But
right. So jump over there and listen to that, or better yet, watch that video.
Yeah, we put it out in both formats, audio and video, so you can listen to either one. And the nice thing about Patreon is you can add it to your podcast player, and it essentially becomes another podcast. It's just another feed of our Patreon-only TCAT episodes. You also get the weekly episodes, all that good stuff.
It's awesome.
Speaking of Patreon, let's give some shout outs. We had Jamie Brown.
Hey, Jimmy.
Kristen Hart.
Hey, thank you, Hart.
Whitney Claypool.
What's going on, Claypool?
Kathleen Jefferson.
Hey, Jefferson.
MP.
Well, I appreciate that, MP.
Jamie Peterson.
What's going on, Jamie?
Danielle Kenobi.
Hey, Obi-Wan.
Yep, that's Obi-Wan's great granddaughter.
Yeah.
Caitlin McCormick.
Hey, Caitlin.
Related to Maureen McCormick, who played who?
I forget.
Marsha Brady.
That's right. But I was thinking McCormick is in the spices.
Oh, so
the Spice Fortune.
Quite possibly is part of the Spice Fortune family.
Yeah.
Okay. Either one. It's got to be one of the two. It couldn't be anything else, right?
Absolutely.
We had Kimberly Kemp.
Hey, Kemp.
Jack Mara.
What's going on, Jack?
Yvonne G.
Hey, Yvonne.
Kevin Smith.
Well, Mr. Smith, how are you?
The famous director.
Yeah.
Chelsea Cordell.
What's going on, Cordell?
Morgan Ho.
Hey, Morgan.
Susie Crary.
Hey, Susie.
Shannon Smith.
Well, thank you, Shannon.
Joanne Mercado.
Ooh, Mercado.
Shiloh Holland.
What's going on, Shiloh?
Tracy Hansen.
Hey, Tracy.
Astrid Wage.
What's going on, Wage?
Manny Borley.
Thank you, Manley.
And Norma Granger.
Well, thank you, Norma.
Then if we go back into the vault, Gibbs.
Okay.
This week we selected Jason K.
Really? Well, thanks. And Tyson?
Yep. We appreciate the new support, the continued support. We had some great PayPal donations as well. Richard Sims.
Hey, Richard.
Mary Ashley.
Thank you, Mary.
Kathy Snyder.
Hey, what's going on, Kathy?
And Photo Card Gallery.
Really? The good old photo card, huh?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, buddy. Are you ready to get into this episode of Unsolved?
I am ready.
We are talking about the unsolved Chicago murders of Marilyn Green and Jerry Hillard. These were two murders that would change the lives of the victims' families forever and would also change the lives of two suspects for the rest of their lives. It's a very bizarre case.
Extremely bizarre.
On August 14th, 1982, around 11 p.m., after a busy day of watching and taking part in the Bud Billiken parade and picnic with almost 20,000 other locals, 18-year-old Jerry Hillard and his 19-year-old fiance Marilyn Green, who was a mother of two small children, walked into the public pool area at Washington Park on the south side of Chicago. Though the pool was closed, it was a scorching August night, and everyone was still having a good time from the earlier parade and picnic. Jerry and Marilyn, along with others, either jumped the fence or found a place to squeeze through.
Pretty common practice back then from everything that I read about that.
Yeah, I think especially in bigger cities.
Yeah.
Philadelphia, Chicago, places where they had public pools. Man, on some of those really hot nights back in the day, people would find a way in.
Right.
They were going to cool off, or they'd pop a hydrant. That was a big thing too in many areas.
And like the police said on this one, that they weren't going to chase people out of there. It was hot. It was better off having them in there where they're trying to get cool than having people, hot.
Committing crimes.
Exactly, or getting in fights with each other because they're all hot and miserable.
Jerry and Marilyn sat up in the bleachers on the west side overlooking the pool. People were swimming, others drinking and partying. It's just the local neighborhood, right? Enjoying a hot Chicago summer night. But later that night, things would quickly change and bring controversy to the city of Chicago that continues to this day. A little after 1 a.m., two young men, William Taylor and Henry Williams, climbed the fence to the pool area. They had been swimming for a short period of time to cool off when Henry Williams decided to get out of the pool and put his pants back on. At that moment, a gunman approached him and demanded money. Well, Williams only had $2 on him, but the gunman took it and walked away. He hurried to finish getting dressed and told William Taylor to get out of the pool. Henry Williams then looked over at the bleachers where Jerry Hillard and Marilyn Green were sitting. He saw the gunman pointing his gun towards them. And according to Williams, he ran from the scene, knowing something bad was about to happen. And once he got outside the fence, he heard several gunshots. During that same time, William Taylor had gotten out of the pool and was drying off. He too heard several gunshots. When he looked up to see where the shots came from, he saw a gunman shoot Jerry Hillard point blank in the head. And after Jerry fell backward in the bleachers, the gunman shot him once more. Taylor said the gunman then took off down the bleachers and ran right by him. Taylor ran up to where Jerry Hillard had fallen down, and when he got there, he saw two victims lying down on the bleachers. Another witness that night, a young teenager named Ray Brown, saw the shooting as well. He had just walked from the field house behind the bleachers into the pool area. Several people called the police from payphones nearby to report hearing gunshots at the Washington Park pool. After William Taylor saw the victims, he went to get help. As he turned away, Marilyn got up, holding her neck, and went down the bleachers and ran outside right into a responding Chicago police officer who had just pulled up. She pointed to the bleachers as she ran past the officer, but she continued to run out into the street where she ran into two other officers. One of these officers placed her in his car and drove her to Providence Hospital, where she later died from her gunshot wounds. Gibbs, pretty tough to imagine. I mean, these are young kids. I call them kids,
right,
because of our age.
Sure.
I mean, technically they're adults, but 18, 19 years old, you have a 19-year-old girl who is mortally wounded.
Yes.
She's going to die later at the hospital.
Yeah.
Witnesses her boyfriend get shot.
Yeah.
She shot, but is able to get up.
Find the strength to get up
Yes.
and run down the bleachers and
that's
out.
what's really striking me, that obviously this is a very severe wound.
Yeah.
Because it kills her. It causes her death later at the hospital. To be able to get up, run down the bleachers, run out into the street, and try to get the attention of a police officer and point and say, hey, get up there.
Yeah, I think she's on adrenaline, man, because she
Has to be.
She runs right by that Officer Liacci, pointing to the, where her boyfriend is, fiance is, and then she continues on until she finds another police officer for her to get her help.
Yeah.
So she put him in front of her.
Kind of amazing.
Sure it is.
Really, if you think about it. During this same time, The first officers responding, Officer Liacci, the one you mentioned, another one named Anderson, they ran behind the outside of the bleachers where they stopped a man named Anthony Porter, who they saw running from the scene. They frisked him. They didn't find a weapon on him, so they let him go. Inside the pool area, other police officers and detectives on the scene called for an ambulance and had two of the witnesses pick Jerry up and carry him to the ground area for the incoming paramedics. The paramedics rushed Jerry Hillard to Billings Hospital, where he died several hours later from his wounds. And I think the thing that really jumped out at me about this portion of it was that, so here you have these police officers, investigators, detectives. These are trained professionals.
Right.
And they are directing bystanders, witnesses.
Yeah.
To carry Jerry Hillard. I found that very odd that these type of professionals would ask people that are not involved at all to kind of get in there and help this guy and carry him to a different area.
I think you'd be somewhat concerned about the crime scene. That alone would be somewhat a concern, I would think. Right? Having them step into the crime scene.
They have no training to know not to step on this or that, or don't disturb anything.
But I get it. It's chaotic, and you want to make sure that you get the individual off and into the ambulance to the hospital as quick as possible. But it's a little different. I'm
not saying it's wrong necessarily, because I don't know. I'm not a police officer. It just kind of struck me as a little strange, I thought. The Cook County Medical Examiner, Joanne Richmond, performed the autopsies on both Jerry and Marilyn. She reported that Jerry had been shot at close range 2 times. One shot entered above his left eye through the eyebrow, and the second shot entered into the left side of his head. They found gunpowder on the back of his hand, and the thought was that most likely he raised his hand close to the gun when it was fired. The medical examiner reported that Marilyn was shot once through her hand in what appeared to be a defensive wound. She was then shot twice in her neck at very close range. Both victims died on August 15th. The murder weapon was identified as a .38 caliber handgun, which Gibbs, from my understanding, that was a pretty common caliber in the early 1980s.
Yeah, I think a lot of people had those.
70s, 80s. You remember you heard a lot about the .38 specials.
Yeah.
It was a fairly common caliber. The Chicago Police Department investigators questioned several witnesses on August 15th about what had occurred. What did they see? Who was involved? Investigators talked with Henry Williams and William Taylor first. And Henry Williams provided the name of the shooter. He said it was Anthony Porter, the same person that police had stopped, frisked, and ultimately let go. The other witness, William Taylor, was initially scared to identify the shooter out of fear of that shooter's gang.
Well, he belonged to 2 gangs. Yeah, he was associated with the Disciples gang and the Cobra Stones gang, unrelated to the Cobra Kai.
But also seemed to me a little strange to be associated with 2 different gangs, but maybe they were kind of not so much rivals, but splits, or I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard to tell.
But I think as it concerns William Taylor, he thought, okay, if he named this guy, there was going to be retaliation against him from one or both of these gangs, and maybe even against his family. But a couple of days later, he did identify Anthony Porter as the shooter. And I think that takes some guts.
Oh, I think so too.
Knowing that this guy's connected to these gangs, and by ratting on him, essentially, you could face some very serious retaliation. The prosecutor wanted a better case before moving forward with an arrest, and had the investigators take the witnesses to the crime scene and walked them through the events as they had seen it. And they did this separately so that they could not influence each other's story, which I think is pretty smart.
I think it's really smart.
While at the crime scene, investigators got wind of 4 other eyewitnesses from that night who were sitting outside the park watching the investigators do the walkthrough. Investigators took each of these people aside for questioning, and they too all identified Anthony Porter as the shooter that night. They all knew who Anthony was because he was well known in the area. He was pretty active. The witnesses, Kenneth Edwards, Michael Woodfork, Eugene Beckwith, and Mark Sr., all made positive identifications of Porter.
Looks like the case is headed in a good direction.
Wow. I mean, to me, as the police, as the investigators, you got to be pretty hopeful. I mean, you've got this many people, Gibbs, all identifying the shooter as Anthony Porter.
Yeah.
On August 18th, 1982, Taylor viewed a lineup at the police station and again identified 27-year-old Anthony Porter, who had been arrested the day before. The police knew who Anthony was. He had a rap sheet, a pretty long rap sheet already, and he'd just gotten out of prison in November of 1981 for a robbery stint. So when that many people identify you as a murderer, you're going to go to trial. There's no way around that.
Yeah, this was going to happen.
The trial of Anthony Porter began on August 30th, 1983. William Taylor and Henry Williams were the 2 key witnesses in the case, and they told the jury what they saw that night. Officer Liacci was also called to testify since he could place Anthony Porter behind the bleachers right after the shootings occurred. The prosecutor didn't have a murder weapon, didn't have any physical evidence. So really, the case rested on the testimony of the witnesses.
But they had a lot of witnesses.
They did. Porter's defense team called Kenneth Doyle, a friend of Porter's, who told the jury that he and Porter were sitting on Porter's back porch drinking that night until about 2 a.m. Kenneth went on to say that he, Porter, and another friend walked over to the project's playground and were there drinking and talking until 9 o'clock in the morning.
Man, that's some serious drinking going on.
And talking.
Yeah. Most guys don't like to talk a lot.
Yeah.
So
I get the drinking, but I'm not talking for 7 hours straight.
No.
To anybody.
No.
But when cross-examined, the prosecution asked him why he told investigators back on August 17th, 1982, that Porter and he only drank until about 10:30 p.m. And then he went home for the rest of the night and hung out with his mother. Dole told the jury that he lied that night out of fear of being arrested, and what he said in court under oath was the truth. Another witness for Porter was his sister-in-law, Georgia Moody. She claimed she had seen Porter at his mother's house that night playing cards with her kids and Porter's mother and Kenneth Doyle. She further told the jury that she did not see them drinking, but did recall them leaving the house around 2:30 a.m. to walk to the project's playground.
Must have been a really exciting playground.
I don't know that it was. I mean, they were just sitting around drinking and talking.
Yeah, I'm guessing probably Mama went to bed and wanted some quiet, and the guy said, "Hey, this is going down the playground. We'll sit over there and do our thing."
Well, there's not going to be any kids there from 2:30 in the morning till 9 a.m.
You'd hope not.
Well, there might be some early, but
yeah,
definitely not at 2:30 in the morning. In September of 1983, it took the jury about 9 hours of deliberation to find Anthony Porter guilty of both murders. The judge reviewed Porter's criminal past for his sentencing hearing. It included violence at an early age. He had a history of jumping bail. In October of 1980, Porter had just been placed on parole when he robbed Douglas McGee at gunpoint on the very same bleachers at the Washington Park pool. Then on August 1st, 1982, while on parole again, he kicked Earl Lewis's dog. The two got into a verbal argument. Porter walked away only to return with a gun, and he shot Lewis in the head.
Well, luckily for Lewis, it only grazed his forehead.
Yeah, because not a lot of people survive a gunshot to the head. Porter was found guilty of aggravated battery and sentenced to 6 years in prison on August 4th, 1983 for that offense. So this is interesting, Gibbs. You know, when you look at Porter's offenses, he shot this guy like less than 2 weeks before the shootings at the pool.
Right.
Now, he didn't go to trial and wasn't convicted for until a year later, but the timing to me is very interesting. And the fact that it seemed as though he was on parole a lot and had no issues with doing things that would have definitely violated his parole and or landed him in prison for another offense.
Yeah, I don't think he cared.
Didn't seem like it.
Mm-mm.
I think at the very least, these things aren't making you think, oh, there's no way this guy was the shooter. If anything, it's kind of like what this guy did.
Yeah, it's his MO to me.
Right. The defense argued that Porter should receive a new trial because one of the jurors knew Marilyn Green's mother. She had attended church with her for several years. The juror claimed she didn't know that Marilyn was the daughter of the woman she knew from church. Eventually, a judge ruled that there would be no new trial. Anthony Porter was sentenced to death for the murders of Jerry Hillard and Marilyn Green. But Gibbs, this is where the case starts to get twisted. I mean, it's already twisted, but
it really gets twisted.
Several community action groups and anti-death penalty groups thought Anthony Porter had been railroaded into his conviction on these murders. Porter's family and these groups helped finance several attorneys over many years of his appeals, but all the appeals were rejected. By 1998, Anthony Porter's time was running out.
Well, that's because they set his execution date for September 23rd of 1998.
Yeah, so literally when you say someone's time is running out, you can't be running out any more than that.
Yeah, it's there. An interesting thing about Anthony Porter, why he was on death row, guess who was right across the cell from him?
This was in an Illinois prison?
Yeah.
State prison, 1980s, 1990s.
Think big.
Mike Tyson.
Think bigger.
Bigger than Mike Tyson?
Yeah. Think clowns.
John Wayne Gacy?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Yep.
I don't know why I said Tyson, because I knew he went to prison for rape, but I couldn't remember what state it was in.
Yeah. I don't remember what year it was, but at one point they were, cross from cells from each other.
They were in adjacent cells?
Yeah.
Wow.
On death row.
When you said bigger, I was like, who's bigger than Mike Tyson? In true crime? John Wayne Gacy.
Yeah, absolutely.
That really is interesting. You think he would put on like makeup? Maybe he made his own makeup in prison.
Like put some, took the soap off the thing and just put it on his face. And
did the sad clown from Seinfeld.
Yeah. Did that kind of whole thing.
So Porter's time is running out. And, his family made another attempt to stop his execution. They hired a young, up-and-coming attorney who specialized in death row appeal cases. The new attorney and the large community of Illinois anti-death penalty groups came up with a game plan. They wanted to have Anthony Porter's mental capacity tested to see if he was mentally disabled and therefore was not able to understand the things that he was charged with and was not competent to be put to death. So they had Anthony tested and his IQ score was 51.
Not good.
Well, it's not good. You and I have talked about a number of times over the years that kind of standard number has been 70.
Right.
When it comes to crime and mental health and Are you competent to understand, what's going on with this and that? But 51 at that level, that's defined by the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders as moderate mental retardation. So because of this development, the Illinois Supreme Court agreed to a mental competency hearing based on the IQ test results.
So that's good for Porter, because his execution was stayed for 4 months while the defense and the prosecutors made their hearing preparations.
But Gibbs, here's the question that I have. Can you tank an IQ test?
Oh, I think you can.
I don't know. I'm assuming you can tank just about any test. So if you knew that the outcome of this test being low would definitely be in your favor,
right?
Could you tank it?
I think you'd be coached to the benefit of trying to tank it.
Yeah, I asked the question. I really don't know. I do know some of these tests are designed to prevent that, right? Thought has been put into them, the way that the questions are asked. Questions are asked sometimes multiple ways, but are essentially the same question. Again, I don't know how this test was administered, but it's a thought that went through my mind. If you knew that would be in your favor, you'd go out of your way to try at least, right?
I just always hope that there were multiple choice and I would just pick C.
C is always the best.
Yeah, pick C, and on true and false, always pick true if you're not sure.
That one I did not know, because usually true and false is very easy.
Yeah.
So I don't usually have to guess at those. Now, Porter's attorney didn't feel that they would win at the hearing, but the defense was able to buy more time, and they pleaded with David Protes, who was a journalism professor at Northwestern, to try to help them get Porter off death row. Protes had started the Northwestern University Innocence Project, which had earlier assisted in the exoneration of several men on death row, such as Rolando Cruz and Alejandro Hernandez. Hernandez was found to have been wrongfully convicted after being prosecuted for the 1983 rape and murder of 10-year-old Janine Nicarico. Both men were exonerated after receiving sentences of death. The Northwestern University Innocence Project assigned students to the Porter case to gather evidence through their investigation. Now, I will say this. There is a lot of controversy on how the students conducted their investigation, at least in the minds of some law enforcement, and I think some lay people as well, that have looked at this case. There were 6 eyewitnesses, but by this time, Henry Williams was deceased. They didn't interview Kenneth Edwards, Michael Woodfork, Eugene Beckwith, or Mark Sr. Instead, they focused on William Taylor.
Which for me is a problem. I don't know why you wouldn't want to talk to every witness that was at trial.
Yeah, I get that. Now, you and I did say that Williams and Taylor were the 2 key witnesses.
Right.
So was that the reason? I don't know. But Taylor told one of the students over the phone, quote, "I know beyond a doubt that Anthony Porter is guilty. I just wish he were executed and I could get on with my life."
Well, and he hung up the phone thinking that would be it. End of story.
But it wasn't, because this student, along with a private investigator named Paul Cialino, went to Taylor's home. And when it was all said and done, they convinced Taylor that maybe he didn't see Porter shoot those victims. Maybe it was someone else that day, and he just remembered seeing Porter there. So I think, Gibbs, this is where you get into some of this really gray area around how the Northwestern University Innocence Project conducted the interviews. How much pressure did they put on Taylor?
According to Taylor, a lot.
Right. This comes from him.
Yeah, down the road later. But as a result of the pressure, he essentially recanted his
earlier statements. And right then and there, Cialino prepared a handwritten statement and had Taylor sign it. They then had him read the statement on video, and this was big news, right? Part of this statement said the police had coerced him into claiming Porter shot Jerry Hillard and Marilyn Green.
Yeah.
In January of 1999, the Northwestern University Innocence Project received some information that a man named Alstory Simon allegedly shot Hillard and Green that night back in 1982. They interviewed Simon and asked if he shot them, as some witnesses had claimed. The witnesses were Simon's ex-wife, Inez Jackson, and her nephew, Walter Jackson. Inez told the Innocence Project that when she and Simon lived in Chicago in 1982, they were friends with Hillard and Green. Inez claimed that Simon killed the couple over a drug deal gone bad. At the time the Innocence Project approached him, Walter Jackson was in prison with Anthony Porter. They were actually friends.
Yeah.
And Porter had recently saved Walter from a hit on his life in the prison yard.
Yeah, he found out that Walter was supposed to be shanked later that afternoon, and
With a shiv?
with a shiv.
Or was he supposed to be shivved with a shank?
Shivved, yeah. But gave him heads up and helped him divert that.
So you think maybe Walter Jackson owed Anthony Porter a debt for saving his life? Maybe.
Yeah.
Walter told the Innocence Project in an affidavit that Alstory Simon told him on the night that Jerry and Marilyn were killed, he, quote, took care of them by shooting them on the bleachers with his .38 caliber handgun. He then said Alstory asked him to stand guard outside his apartment building just in case Jerry's Cobra Stone's gang members came by.
Maybe for some revenge.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure that's what he was afraid of. So you had this guy, Alstory Simon. You had a lot of pressure
Yeah.
from all this information coming out about the fact that he committed these murders. He was also doing quite a bit of crack cocaine. And he ended up telling the Innocence Project investigators that, you know what? Maybe he did kill Jerry and Marilyn, but if he did, it was in self-defense. They taped his confession and they had him go to police on February 3rd, 1999. Police were able to get an official confession from Simon. And once the Innocence Project got a hold of the official confession, they released it to the press. And then later they presented it to the Cook County Prosecutor's Office and the State Attorney General's Office.
Well, you can only imagine the buzz that the media had with this. Here's a guy sitting on death row. Here's a guy saying he did it.
Well, and
What options do you have as...
yeah. And Anthony Porter's not just sitting on death row. He's about ready to come up for execution.
Yeah, I believe he was just days away.
So, I mean, it's like the sense of urgency and the buzz and the,
Yeah.
are we about ready to kill an innocent man?
Yeah.
All of that had to be going on. So the State Attorney General's office conducted a review and investigation, and based on the results of that, Anthony Porter was released from prison after serving 17 years on death row. Shortly after Porter's release, Alstory Simon was charged with the murders of Jerry Hillard and Marilyn Green. In September of 1999, he pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 37 years for 2 second-degree murder counts. But it's not the end of this case, Gibbs, and it gets more bizarre.
It does. And frustrating.
I mean, we're not going to spend a lot of time going into the details of Alstory Simon's confession and conviction, but in the end, this guy was wrongfully accused of this murder. Well, and I think you have to say he also falsely confessed to this murder.
Yes.
You have to say both of those things.
Right.
Because I don't think if he had ever confessed, he would have been charged.
Right.
And I think that's an important distinction to make. but he remained in prison for 15 years. Efforts for his release didn't come until 2005, when the two main witnesses against him, Inez Jackson and her nephew Walter Jackson, both recanted their statements. In a deathbed video confession, Inez said that she only said Simon was guilty because she was upset that he left her.
Yeah, she was really scorned.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's an understatement. You're going to put a man in prison for maybe the rest of his life or a large chunk of his life because you're mad that he left you?
Yeah, she said that was the main reason. Yeah.
And let's not forget, another guy went free.
Right.
And we're going to talk about him a little bit more.
Yeah.
So you've got that. She also alleged that she was promised a lot of money from David Protests of the Innocence Project to say that Alstory Simon committed the murders. Now, Walter said he did it because he owed Anthony Porter for saving his life that day in the prison yard. We talked about that.
Yeah.
He also said that David Protest told him that he would assist him in getting out of prison once he got Porter out.
Do this for me. I'll help you get out as well.
So you have this Alstory Simon guy hearing all of this, right?
Yeah.
He's thinking back to the pressure he was under. He's thinking back to the drugs that he was doing.
Right.
And the promises of money.
Sure. Lots of money.
Which we really didn't go into detail on. But what all of this resulted in was him recanting the statement he made in 1999. So this wasn't good news for David Protest, right, Gibbs? I mean, he was being hit with a number of allegations that certainly didn't make him look good. Now, he and his team denied all of these allegations, but he was put on leave in 2011 during an investigation into several of his wrongful conviction cases, and he resigned from the university shortly after that.
I think the university was not pleased.
I'm sure they weren't. You know what universities don't like?
Well, they don't like this.
Bad press.
Yeah, exactly.
Or anything that would cast an unethical shadow
Right.
over, one of its members, one of its faculty. They don't like that.
Right.
They won't put up with that. Cook County State's Attorney Anita Alvarez conducted a year-long investigation of Simon's case. She vacated the charges against him and ended his 37-year sentence in October 2014. She ordered his release from prison.
It's a big day.
Yeah. She said that the investigation by the Innocence Project, quote, involved a series of alarming tactics that were not only coercive and absolutely unacceptable by law enforcement standards, they were potentially in violation of Mr. Simon's constitutionally protected rights.
Yeah, I remember watching a press conference on this, and one of the reporters said, "Are you going to go after some of the members of the Innocence Project, mainly David Protest?" And she said, "Unfortunately, we can't because it's outside of the statute of limitations." So, I mean, there's some serious charges that could have been there.
Oh my gosh. Well, and I didn't bring it up when we were first talking about it, but I think I'll bring it up now. So you have this university Innocence Project. From my understanding, Gibbs, and I think we said at least one student, there were a number of students involved in this, conducting research and conducting investigations, interviews. Okay. Is that the right thing to do in this type of environment with the magnitude, of what could happen?
Yeah, I think if you dive into this Innocent Project and how this occurred, and you look at some of the documentaries around this, you're going to come away pretty angry with how they handled it.
Yeah, and it's so strange because the Innocence Project, that term, that umbrella, that entity.
Yeah.
I don't know how it's separate from the Northwestern University Innocence Project.
Yeah, but it's probably pretty defined that it's not connected with that.
But when you hear the term Innocence Project, you think, wow, those are a bunch of attorneys doing really good work.
Right.
Because, they're undoing these wrongful convictions. They're getting these people out that never should have been sentenced in the first place.
And then you have something like this that taints it.
Well, but there's my point, right? My understanding is that's a group of attorneys. I don't know that they're having college students go out and interview and pressure
for class credit.
I think that's where, and I hate to put this on the students. I think you put most of it on to David Protest.
Right.
Because most of the heat came down on him.
He was the professor.
Yeah. As of today, the murders of Jerry Hillard and Marilyn Green are still unsolved. The investigators and the prosecutors from 1982 believe that they had the right person from day one. And they think that Anthony Porter is lucky to be out on the street. And you've already talked about it, Gibbs. There's a lot out there as far as documents, research on this case. People can go out and read some more in-depth stuff. There's only so much we can put in an episode.
Right.
I think if you do, you'll really get a sense of, how these two cases were handled, the methods that were used. Most people who take the time to do that, I believe, will come away outraged by what occurred. I think at the very least, you can say that Simon did a lot of time for something he definitely did not do.
Right.
And then when it comes to Anthony Porter, people are a little more split.
Yeah.
I think there are some people that still feel like he was railroaded, but there's a lot of people that feel like he got away with murder.
Yeah. I mean, he spent 17 years.
Right.
But,
So he did some time. The question is, if he actually did commit the murders, do you believe that was enough? Should he be out walking the street?
Yeah, and I think any family member would say no.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think the family members would say that.
Now, Anthony Porter did try to sue the city of Chicago for $24 million for wrongful conviction.
That's ballsy.
It is ballsy.
Pretty ballsy.
But it backfired on him.
Yeah, the case went to court. The city won. They told the jury he committed the murders and was lucky to even be out on the streets.
Yeah.
Alstory Simon filed a $40 million suit against Northwestern's Innocence Project, stating that people associated with it deceived and coerced him into a false confession for the murders of Hillard and Green, which resulted in him being convicted of murder and serving 15 years in prison. In November 2018, he received an undisclosed settlement.
Good. He should be cashed out on that.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
I have no problem, Gibbs, with people getting money in these wrongful convictions when it's proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that they were wrongfully convicted.
Yeah.
My only gripe is actually that in a lot of cases, it seems to be too low. Now, some of them are pretty high, but a lot of them seem to be very low.
And we've seen that, like we're cover one, and it'll be like $200,000. But then you see another one where it's over $1 million for the same amount of time in prison.
Yeah.
And you're like, why is that?
Yeah. And I mean, I've seen some that were $50,000 a year.
Right.
Or whatever. And you can say, well, $50,000 is a lot of money. Is it? To give up a year of your life? Not even that, to have somebody take away a year of your life. So let's say you did 10 years in prison.
Right.
You were wrongfully convicted. You were coerced. Somebody planted evidence, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
You're telling me you're going to give me $500,000? Now, $500,000 is a lot of money, but not for 10 years of someone's life.
Yeah, I would say you just can't pay me for what my potential earnings might have been.
Right.
I want for everything I lost, too, when I'm not working.
So, Again, I don't know what the perfect balance is, and I know it varies by state. It may even vary by different jurisdictions within the state. I don't know. As of early 2020, David Protests runs the Chicago Innocence Project. And again, Gibbs, I don't want to cast a bad light on the Innocence Project because I think they do great work.
Absolutely, they do.
I don't think there's any doubt when you look at the research and the things that were uncovered in the later investigations that people felt this man did some things he shouldn't have done. And I'll leave it at that.
Right.
But that's it for the unsolved murders of Marilyn Green and Jerry Hillard. You know, two young adults, very young adults, shot down. You know, one a 19-year-old mother of two.
Yeah, man.
Over what? Couldn't have been anything.
Yeah, nothing worth.
If it was robbery, there wasn't much money involved.
Right.
I just don't get it. And then, you know, you have however millions of dollars of taxpayer money that was spent on two trials, convictions, the wrongful conviction payout.
Yeah.
I mean, you just add all of that, the investigation that was done to try to figure out what went wrong. You're into the millions and millions. Two men spent time in jail for murder. One we know was not connected to the murder at all. And I think the other one, the jury's still out.
Yeah.
Now, the jury made a decision.
It did.
But you know, it's hard for me to sit here and say with 100% certainty that Anthony Porter is guilty. A jury convicted him.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of people that think he was innocent, and technically he's out on the street. So it's hard for me to sit here and say definitively that he killed these two people. I think most people believe he did.
Right.
I'll say that. And that he got out much earlier than he should have. We got some voicemails, Gibbs. You want to check those out?
Yeah, let's hear them.
Hi, Mike and Gibby. This is Megan Begay from Flagstaff, Arizona. And I just wanted to say that I really enjoy your guys' podcast. I am a Native American from northern Arizona, from a tribe called the Navajo. And we had a case happen on the reservation. A guy named Lesmond Mitchell brutally murdered and killed a grandmother and her young granddaughter. And it would be interesting to hear that story told by you guys. But anyway, I just wanted to say, truly enjoy your guys' podcast and thank you for all the crazy stories, and keep your own time ticking. Bye.
Wow, well, I love Flagstaff. That's a beautiful part of Arizona.
Yeah, and that sounds like a very interesting case to me.
Yeah.
Have you seen the movie with Jeremy Renner?
Oh, yeah.
I love that movie. What is it called? Wind Walker?
No.
Wind something? Wind on...
I don't remember what it's called, but it's good.
It's got wind in the title, I think.
Yeah, it's not Wind Talker. It's but was his daughter murdered too in that one?
Yes,
Yeah.
But he's investigating the murder of a young girl.
Right.
It's on the reservation. It's very good movie. I've seen it a couple times.
Yeah. The way it starts is really really good.
Yeah. So we'll definitely have to look into that.
Hey, Mike and Gibby. Sarah from Nashville again. I called and left you guys a voicemail a little bit ago about the Pasco County 4 unsolved murder. And I was just listening to the Eileen Warnos cases, and I did have a couple of tidbits about that. The body that was found in Homosassa, actually, my husband lived 5 miles from where that was from. He remembers everything from that case. And also, I had mentioned I worked at the Pasco County Sheriff's Office. Well, I had a very close friend there who worked at the jail at the time that Eileen Warnos was booked into Pasco County Jail. And so she told the story that she can remember her walking by her desk, cat calling her, making kissy faces at her and all that kind of stuff. So it was just a fun little story that not everybody can say. And I hope you guys are doing awesome and you're staying safe and healthy. And as always, keep your own time ticking.
Well, those are unique.
Yeah, interesting stories. I think I actually meant to put that on the TCAT, and there's a voicemail on TCAT that I think I meant to put on Unsolved.
Well, you're just spicing it up is what you're doing.
Just keeping everybody on their toes.
Hi, Mike and Gibby, Megan from Maine. I wanted to say that I am completely obsessed with you guys. I started your podcast, I don't know, probably 2 months ago. A case that you guys could look into for unsolved. It's Waterville, I think, from 2011. And it was a little girl. She was little too, and when, like, her dad and the dad's girlfriend put her to bed at night and woke up the next day and she was gone. And it's still unsolved. They, searched for years trying to find her, trying to find the body, trying to figure out what happened. And it was a pretty big case in Maine. But it would be cool to hear you guys do a story on it. I would have to say Team Gibby if I had to choose, but I obviously love you both. Great podcast. Thanks for everything you do.
Okay.
But I don't know what happened there.
I didn't realize that was cutting out as bad when I listened to it before. Yeah. So we'll definitely check into that case.
Sure.
I like it when people say, if I had to choose.
Right.
You don't have to choose.
Oh, yes, you do.
You chose to choose, and you said Team Gibby. All right, everyone. That's it for another episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved. So for Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.